They thought they could control everything about me. The HOA sent letters, fines, and threats, acting like they owned my property. But they didn't realize one thing. The very power that kept their neighborhood running flowed through my land. I grew up here. My family farm stood long before the subdivision was even a thought. For years we lived quietly, growing crops and raising animals. When the developers built their shiny neighborhood next door, I didn't complain. I minded my business, and they minded theirs. But then, the HOA started meddling. They said my barn was too old. They said my tractors were too noisy. And then, one day, they came after my solar panels. See, I had installed a full solar setup on my land, rows of panels that powered my farm and even stored extra energy. It was clean, efficient, and mine. But the HOA decided it was an eyesore. They demanded I remove it immediately. I laughed at first. I wasn't part of their HOA. Their rules didn't apply to me. But the next morning, I woke up to silence. My system had been tampered with. Wires were cut, batteries damaged. The power I relied on was gone. I knew exactly who was behind it. When I confronted the HOA board, they smirked. They said, maybe you should stick to the grid like the rest of us. They thought they had won. What they didn't know was how much power literally depended on my land. Years ago, when the subdivision was planned, the county struck a deal with my grandfather. The neighborhood streetlights were tied into the power lines crossing my property. They never expected someone like me to notice. So I started digging through documents, old easements, utility maps, county agreements, and sure enough, the grid connection was crystal clear. The HOA's entire streetlight system ran across my property. That was my leverage. I called an electrician friend. Together we installed a master cutoff switch where the line crossed my land. With one pull, I could plunge the entire neighborhood into darkness. The first night I used it, the reaction was priceless. Street after street went pitch black. The board president's fancy security lights went dead. The clubhouse parking lot looked abandoned. Panic spread fast. The next morning, the HOA stormed to my door. They shouted that I had broken the law. I calmly pulled out the easement papers. The power line crossed my land, and the contract said maintenance was my responsibility. If I wanted it disconnected, I had every right. They threatened to sue me. I told them to go ahead, because I also had photos of the damage to my solar panels. Photos that clearly showed tampering, evidence that could land them in serious legal trouble. For 3 weeks, we played this game. Every time they harassed me, I flipped the switch. The neighborhood plunged into darkness again. Residents were furious. They filled Facebook with complaints. They demanded answers, and the board couldn't admit the truth, that they had messed with me first. Finally, the HOA caved. They agreed to pay every dollar in damages to my solar system. They also signed a contract guaranteeing they would never interfere again. And to seal the deal, they paid me an annual fee to keep their streetlights running. The irony wasn't lost on me. They had tried to destroy my solar panels. Now they were literally paying me to keep the lights on. I rebuilt my system bigger and better than before. Double the panels, double the batteries, and plenty of security cameras to make sure no one touched them again. Now every night when the neighborhood glows under their streetlights, I smile. Because I know those lights only shine because of me. The HOA thought they could bully me. Instead, they ended up in the dark. They tried to erase my freedom. But all they did was give me more power than ever. If you think arrogant HOAs deserve what they get, share this story, because this isn't the last time they'll try to mess with the wrong person.